Hey guys, this is Christopher, and in this FreeCAD tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the mirror and pattern tools in the part design workbench. So to start off, I have this sample piece here that I created. It's just a simple sketch and then a pad 1/4 inch high. And I'm going to use this to demonstrate these pieces. So before I start creating patterns, I need to put a feature like a hole into this that I can pattern around on it. So I'm going to create a new sketch by clicking on this face and then clicking on the new sketch button. That automatically mounts it to the face that I clicked on. So I don't have to set it in one of the default planes. I can put it on any face I want. Now I'm just going to put a hole over here and define it. Now our sketch is fully defined. We have an 1/8 inch hole on this edge. And if I close the sketch, we can just pocket like normal. I'll go all the way through, hit OK, and now we've got a hole. So what I want to do with this hole now is I want to create a row of holes that goes all the way around here, and then all the way around here, and a second row that goes around there and around there. So we could create a sketch and do each individual hole and then extrude it, but that would take a long time. So that's why we're going to use the patterns. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror this hole to the other side. So in order to do that, we have to have a plane that's halfway in between so that we can mirror it exactly to the other side. Now in order to do that, I'm going to go into the part workbench and create a plane that I can move around. So in the primitives, I'll select plane. The size doesn't matter. I'll create it and close. Now the plane's not where I want it to be. So if I select the plane, and in data, not under view, but in the data options, I can open up placement, change the angle to 90 degrees. Now you'll see it rotated, but not in the right direction. So I have to go into the axis and change the axis of rotation. Right now it's rotating 100% around the z-axis. I want it to rotate around a different axis, so if you make that 1 and that 0, that's also not what I want. If I make that 1 and that 0, that is what I want. What's going on there is it's 100% rotating around the y-axis, but if I make one of these other ones a 1 also, now it's half x and half y. And I could do 1/3 of each, or I could do half z, and now there's twice as much x and twice as much y as there is z. So it's kind of confusing to get used to that. There's a lot of complicated angles that go into everything. But that's how you manipulate the axis. Normally it'll just be zeros and ones if you want straight axes. Position, I'm going to make the x 0.5, and that's exactly halfway in the middle of my part. And now we're finished. The plane is where we need it to be. So back in the part design workbench, now we're ready to use the mirror tool on this pocket we created. So select the pocket and then select the mirror tool, and you can see it is mirroring this hole to this other side, but not where we want it. It's using the wrong plane. So if you scroll down here and select your plane, you could choose any of these already pre-existing planes or select one that you create. So here's the one that it was trying to mirror around before, but we're going to select this one that we created. Now, sometimes whenever I choose this option, it crashes FreeCAD for me. So I have to do this. If it crashes for you, just choose whichever one works. But now we have a hole on either side, and they're exactly symmetric about that plane. So we hit OK. We would keep that. But this isn't what we want to do if we're trying to get two rows going around either side of this. We would have to do a mirror after we do everything else. But you can only do a pattern or a mirror on a pocket or a pad or any of these other additive or subtractive tools. You can't do it on an already existing pattern. So we couldn't create a pattern and then another pattern and then mirror those two patterns because they're not additive or subtractive. So that's why we have this multi-transform tool. We can do several patterns at once. So first I'm just going to go through and do these next two on how to use them, and then we're going to actually do the 2 rows of each with the multi-transform tool. So I'm just going to delete this mirror that we created, and now we've only got one hole again. Now I'm going to show you how we're going to use the linear pattern to make the rows. So you can click on this, and since we didn't click on the pocket first, we can select it now and hit OK. And now if you scroll down again, we have our options here. So the length and the occurrences, that defines how many things you're patterning and the distance between the first and the last object. So if we make the length 1/4 of an inch and reverse the direction, now there's 1/4 of an inch between the centers of these circles. If we made 3 occurrences, now there's still 1/4 inch between the center of the first and last circle, but there's 3, 1 in between and 2 on the ends. And if we had 4, then they would start overlapping, but there's still the same distance between them. And if we increase that distance, now we have our holes. 2 of them fit, the other 2 don't. And if you scroll up, it gives an error. It says 2 of them don't work. It just won't do anything with them. But the 2 of them that are on our pre-existing model work. So of course you can just reverse the direction, and you can also choose a direction here. But it's in the direction we want, so we'll leave it. And I'll change this back to 2 occurrences and 1/4 inch between the first and the last occurrence. So we can hit OK, and that is the first operation we're going to do in the multi-transform. But again, that doesn't help us by itself because let me show you what happens if we try to do a polar or a rotational on our linear pattern. See, it doesn't show up. We could pocket, or we could do the rotational on the pocket, but see, it's only doing one of the holes. It's not doing both. So we can't even do it on a linear one. So I'm going to delete that because it's not useful, and I'm just going to make one on the first hole we had. And scroll down, and we have almost the same options here. The difference is instead of distance, it's angle, but it's kind of the same thing, just around in a circle. And instead of choosing a direction, we choose the axis that it's revolving around. So I'm going to make the occurrences 4. Now it's going 4 times 360 degrees around. If we change this to 180, now it's going halfway around, but there's still 4 of them. And if I go 100 degrees or 90 degrees, then we'll get just around that part. But it's only one row because we don't have the linear pattern happening first. And again, you can reverse the direction. So I'm just going to cancel this because we don't actually need it. But we're going to combine all three of those now in the multi-transform tool. So click on it. We want to do it on the pocket. And now if we scroll down, instead of having options here, we have a place where we can right click and choose what patterns we want to use. So the first one we need to do is linear. First we're going to create a second row, then we're going to do a rotational or polar around this direction, then around that direction, and then mirror all of it. So in the linear pattern, if you scroll down, it's got the options right here. So we want length is 1/4 of an inch and 2 occurrences. Reverse the direction, just like we had before. Hit OK. But now we're still in the transform tool. So if you scroll down back to this same spot and right click and add a polar pattern, now you can see the polar pattern is acting on the linear pattern, not just the first hole we created. So scroll down and our options are here again. Change that to 90, occurrences to 4, and we already have the correct axis selected, and that's what we want. So hit OK, and then right click and do another polar pattern. It'll be exactly the same, except I'm going to reverse the direction. Oh, I don't want 9 degrees. 90. There. So now we have it going this way and that way. So hit OK. We still have all of these patterns happening. And now we can finally add our mirror pattern. So it's trying to mirror around this plane. We don't want that, so we need to select the plane that we do want. And again, this one doesn't make my program crash, so I'm going to use it. And now we have all of the holes that were over here also over there. And it's symmetrical. So we have all 4 of these, and we could go ahead and add more. You can also edit and delete the pre-existing ones. Or move them up or down, which will make them happen before the other ones. Like we could mirror before we do the linear pattern or something. But this is what we want, so I'm going to hit OK. And instead of adding another one, I'm just going to hit OK again, and that finalizes that tool. And we have all of the holes we need with just the one hole that we started with. Just that one hole, and now we have all these. And we didn't have to create a sketch and do all of them and define each hole and everything. All of that was just from the patterns. So obviously you could use the patterns if you needed to do like 100 holes. That's really great time to use patterns, because you don't want to do that many in your sketch. And we can also just hide this plane because we don't need that anymore. So that's how to use these patterns in FreeCAD and how to use all of them together with a multi-transform feature. So I hope this video was useful to you, and if it was, don't forget to like and subscribe.